having this workshop. So we've got Lisa Tunnell, she's the Vice President of Sheffield NUT. She's going to give a talk about basically getting solidarity through strikes. So I'll just hand over straight to Lisa, and after Lisa spoke, then we'll take contributions and questions. So, straight to Lisa.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. It's nice to see you all here today. I'm a teacher in Sheffield, and it's brilliant I've got the opportunity on the 1st of October to actually come out on strike against the attacks the government have been making against the education system, against teachers, against our students. And before I go on to talk about Strike Day, to talk about solidarity, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we got there to the 1st of October, because for a lot of us within the NUT, it's actually been a struggle to keep action on the table. We've had to struggle against our union leadership not to delay action even further, and to actually keep their promises of action that we've been putting motions for through conferences for the past couple of years. And I want to go back just briefly to November 30th in 2011, where we saw one of the biggest strike days that we've had in this country for years. 2.5 million workers out on strike. November 30th, across the public sector unions, all of the major public sector unions were out on strike. And it was a fantastic day with 500,000 people out on the streets demonstrating. The confidence of workers was lifted, and it was a brilliant day. Unfortunately, what we saw after that massive strike was the union leaders pulling back from action, signing up to the heads of agreement, and basically selling out their members who would actually come out, and show their willingness to fight. And that anger and frustration after November 30th was still bubbling under in a lot of unions, and that frustration has led to conference after conference, particularly at the NUT, where we have voted again and again for more national strike action. At the last conference in Liverpool this year, 40% of our membership at that conference voted to have national strike action before the summer, before this autumn. And the union leadership were arguing against us every step of the way, saying that we had to wait for the NAS in the autumn, we were going to have regional strikes, not national strikes before the summer, and that we had to wait for unity between unions. And while we agree we need unity with unions, what we actually argue is, if we have national strike action, that will build workers' confidence much more than having just regional strikes and then building up to the national strike. And I just want to use the example of June 30th, 2011. NUT, ATL, PCS and UCU came out on strike on the 30th of June. If those unions had not come out on their own then there would not have been the 2.5 million people out in November bringing that anger and frustration out onto the streets. So it's the action of a few unions that has led to the bigger action of more unions, and that's kind of the point that I want to make today. When people come out together, it builds their confidence, it recruits people to the unions, and so we need to be pushing our unions constantly for more and more action. So when teachers come out on October 1st, it's not just about us and our campaign for better pay and better conditions. It's part of the wider fight against austerity, and we need as many people to come and support us and show solidarity as possible. Not just for other unions to join in, but for us to keep pushing our own union leadership to push them for further action down the line. And we had some brilliant examples of solidarity in the June strikes that they had in the North West region just before the summer. You might have seen these green t-shirts in the press, on the news. They're part of our campaign and part of us showing solidarity for the other regions that are out on strike. The 1st of October will be Yorkshire region that's out. Other examples that we had, we were twinning with other schools in the Northwest, and we had the responsibility for actually sending support to that school. So people did things like sending cupcakes and pizza to picket lines. In the morning, we had people sending Bolshevik bears, these little teddy bears with messages of support on, to give to the people on the picket line, so they could take it back into their staff room after the strike and have it as like a little mascot, sort of in the staff room to remind them of the action that they take, which was a lovely gesture. We want to see other banners from other unions on the picket lines and on the rally. On 1st of October, there's going to be a rally in the city centre in Barker's Hall. We want people to come down with their trade union banners, people who aren't on strike to come out at lunchtime from their workplaces and come and support us. We want people to go back to their union branches to pass motions of support, to donate to our hardship funds, and to push through their divisions to support action for the strike unions. It's not just going to be teachers, it's looking very likely CWU will come out, it's about the grave diggers in Rotherham actually balloting for strike action at the minute. So it's spreading everywhere. So we need solidarity for all of those people. And hopefully today, part of today will be thinking of those really creative ideas that we can do to show support. And I really hope people share their experiences and come up with some good ideas as well after I've stopped speaking. One of the things I think about sharing experience that's going to be really important coming up is the Unite the Resistance Conference on the 19th of October down in London. It's an opportunity for every activist to come from their union, to get together and to share those experiences of how they are building in their union, how they're pushing their union leadership, and how they're showing support for other unions that are on strike. So I think I would urge you to go back to your union branches to ask if they're sending a delegation and to get down to London on the 19th of October. And more importantly than that, the 29th of September in Manchester, it's going to be a massive opportunity for activists and trade unionists all to come together to show the Tories that we're not putting up with their attacks on us, but also to show solidarity with the NHS workers who are fighting hard to defend our NHS campaign to keep our NHS public. And it's an opportunity for us all to show our union leadership the fury and the frustration that still exists, the appetite for a fight that our members still have, and to push them into calling more action. And you can see kind of this taking effect a little bit at the TUC conference. The PCS president has said that we cannot afford to wait for a change of government into 2015. We need to start acting now. And Dave Prentice actually said, make no mistake, if employers refuse to negotiate, if the attacks continue, we will deliver the coordinated action called for at TUC conference. They're calling unions to coordinate their strike action in together, which is absolutely fantastic. And it's nice to hear our leaders saying this. However, I would say that we can't let the words that they use just dissipate like it did on 30th of November 2011. We need to be pushing them to commit to action and that they say that they're going to deliver. Steve Turner from Unite talks about, he actually mentions the People's Assembly, and he talks about building a coalition for change and the responsibility we have to provide hope and inspiration for people in place of fear and despair. And I think that's really important as well, particularly in the context of the EDL organising, the far right organising. We need to be offering an alternative for people to fight against the government and not scapegoat other people. But I am wary when Steve Turner says, he talks about the day of civil disobedience and he talks about mass action, which is fantastic. Of course we want mass action. We want people to be out doing demonstrations and protests, and we want creative ways to show the government that we're not putting up with what they're doing. However, I don't think that mass action, we can't let it take the place of mass strike action. It can't be a substitute for it. It's got to be alongside it. And I want to talk a little bit about why mass strike action is so important. And I want to just refer briefly to Rosa Luxemburg, the German revolutionary, who talks about mass strikes and what mass strikes do. And she says that mass strikes bring together politics and economics. When unions fight on their own, they fight for their own pay and conditions. They fight separate economic battles to win for their own members. But when unions come together and fight, it turns into a political battle that challenges the government. And that's what we want. If we are here to organise against austerity and to fight the political system, then we need unions fighting together in mass strikes. Otherwise, we're just fighting separate economic battles for our own good and not changing the political system so it's better for everyone. And Rosa Luxemburg actually mentions, she says, if mass strikes and the mass struggles to be successful, they must become a real people's movement. And it's interesting that she uses that phrase, because the People's Assembly is trying to be that people's movement that pushes things forward. But it cannot be separate from strike action. Because strike action unites people, it builds people's confidence, and with that confidence comes the ability to challenge our leaders when they hold strike action back and when they hold further action back. And we know from the 30th of November that the leadership can do that. They can take all that confidence, all that energy, all that desire to fight, and they can put it back. And the stakes are just too high for us to allow that to happen again this time round. And I just want to use an example, just very quickly, of the Sparks dispute last year, because it's a really good example of how rank and file workers can overcome the leadership holding back a struggle and actually winning their own dispute. So last year, the multinational companies tried to rip up the national agreement that the electricians had, and it meant for them a 35% pay cut. It meant worsening of their terms and conditions at work. And they had protests across the country, they had big demonstrations, they blockaded roads, they occupied buildings, and everywhere they went they won solidarity from the public and from other workers. They eventually forced their union to call an official strike ballot to back their action, and they won. And they won against big multinational companies like Balfour Beatty, people who you would think you wouldn't be able to defeat. And one of the key things for those electricians was the workers at the Grangemouth oil refinery in Scotland. When the electricians said that they were going to call a strike, every other worker in that oil refinery said that they would refuse to cross the picket line, which would mean that Scotland's only oil refinery would shut down. And it was the threat of that oil refinery shutting down that made companies back off and defeated Balfour Beatty. So really it's the solidarity of all the workers that is going to make a difference in the struggles that come ahead. And it's important not just for those single disputes, but actually to give people who are in unions everywhere the confidence to fight, despite what their union leadership might do, not because of what their union leadership does. So I hope today we will have a good debate and a good discussion about how we can push the fight forward, how we can keep pressure on our unions to call for further action, and so that when they try to hold back the struggle, like they did on November 30th, we don't let them do that. And the best way, I think, of building support is getting people down to Manchester on the 29th, getting people down to United Distance on October 19th to show that we're willing to fight to the end, to defeat austerity, to defeat the
Just before opening up to questions and comments, I think it's pertinent to give a little bit of a commentary about where the CWU stand on things. I'm the area closest in London, I do Sheffield United and like South. But nationally we're balancing to essentially protect our terms and conditions where we're fighting the battle against privatisation. I mean, it was quite ironic that on Thursday that Vince Cable come out and gave his announcement that it will be putting forward privatising Royal Mail for the stock market in the next couple of weeks. On the same day that 1,500 trade unionists were all down in Birmingham with both Billy Hayes and Dave Ward, that would also get a platform from Moira Green, Chief Executive of Royal Mail. And to say she got the frostiest of receptions is a little bit of an understatement. Booed, heckled, she seemed a bit shell-shocked about what local reps, and it weren't just national officials, it weren't just area representatives, it were 1,500 local representatives from delivery offices up and down the country that were expressing their disgust at the way the business is looking at things. Because it's not just the issue of privatisation, it's also the issue about protecting our terms and conditions. Or what Royal Mail are offering is like that, it's not even a legal guarantee, it's a guarantee that protects our terms and conditions for 3 years. Now there's a legislation in Parliament, the Treaty Agreement, that protects terms and conditions for 2 years. So all we've actually been given off the business is an additional year. So basically we're looking at balancing nationally on protecting our terms and conditions for quite some period of time, if not in perpetuity. And it's not any coincidence that the same issues that we're facing, every other employer are facing the same issues. It's a tax on our pension funds, it's a tax on our terms and conditions, and it's a tax on our pay. So we've got the NUS, we've got the teaching industry, we've got Royal Mail, all facing very, very similar issues. So I think it's very important that when we get national balance for industrial action, that we do then coordinate these strikes. I mean, certainly the one thing that Dave Ward, our Deputy General Secretary, has stated is that the first day of the week take 24-hour strike action. He's calling on every single person to go down to London, probably the biggest demonstration of postal workers that we've seen in history. Not just let's go out and strike, but let's actually hit the cobbles round around Westminster and actually have a proper demonstration about it. So that's essentially where we're heading within the Communication Workers Union. So now basically we're stuffing it up for questions for Lisa and obviously anybody who's got contributions to where we go forward. Yeah.
Yeah, David Kirkham, taking care of UK and Cut. Sorry, David Kirkham taking care of UK and Cut in Sheffield. Yes, that's okay. Excuse me. UK and Cut have done what Lisa said. We have had simultaneous support with strike actions taking place in Sheffield, especially on June the 30th. I think that's the kind of thing perhaps Lisa was talking about. It's not a case of either or. It's bringing everything together at the same time. But one thing that was notable then, which I think we should probably work on, is that although you had people who were taking part in UK press action, highlighting what, say, the effects of tax avoidances on public services are being attacked by the government, you might have only got, say, 10, 15 people on ahead of a rally of about 10,000, 15,000 people. So I think there's probably a little bit of reciprocation needed, whereas if people are going and taking direct action, other members of the public who are supporting unions, who are actually prepared to go on to rallies or go on marches, it's to work the other way as well. So you don't have just a few people going on direct action. You have perhaps 100 people going into a store, like we have had in the past, and doing that. So it's like a two-way thing. Because the one thing, when I talk to people who are, say, Daily Mail readers, Daily Telegraph readers, is that they still see the strike action as simply about public sector terms and conditions, which it isn't. We all know it's about what the strike will do to everybody in the country. Should we say we're striking for the people who can't get through to NHS 111 and can't get proper advice over the phone, striking for the students whose education is suffering because of what the cuts are doing to education, the striking because of people who are dying in house fires, because of fire engines. It's not just purely what we've been doing, what people see as a self-interested thing from the unions. So I think that's why you need to get the solidarity to make sure that everybody, these strikes and actions are on behalf of everybody, whether you're in a union, not in a union, whether whatever your spectrum of political beliefs are, but they are for the whole country and not for the good of the country. Otherwise it will still be seen as something specifically for the public sector. And don't forget, people's minds are being turned against the public sector by the government and by the media, not buying into it, obviously. Just one thing also read this morning, I don't know if anything comes of it, you've got Danny Alexander, who's able to say that time is coming out of pay rises in the private sector because of the economy's recovery, which we know it isn't. So if they can somehow wrangle people in the private sector to believe they are actually getting pay rises and getting an improvement in their conditions, and then say, oh well, we're quite happy now for the public sector to take a hit because we've taken a hit for so long. You can see where the angle might be coming from with the right-wing press and the government. So you need to have some way of overcoming that. Everyone has been hit, everyone will be hit. And why believe people who conned you in the past, going to con you for years to come? How you do that? Well, that's rhetorical. But I think it's just to put up a two-way thing.
My name's Shannon Price and I'm the convener of Apple, which is the probation workers union. And we've got a massive battle on because this lot are going to privatise us. They're talking about the end of March, the probation service will no longer exist. And at least 70% of it will be given over to the Sharks and G4S and Serco and all them corrupt criminals. I mean, it's about putting the criminals in charge of the criminals. I mean, it's disgraceful. But so we've got a massive fight. But I just wanted to come back to what the comrade over there has just said, because I think they are trying to divide it. Absolutely they are. But I think what undermines that, we bombard with it all the time because the media is owned by the rich. But what does undermine it is people's experience. Because in any family or group of friends, you will have people who work in the private sector and you'll have people who work in the public sector. And I don't want my cousin or my husband or my wife or my mother or my brother to have a pay cut just because I work in the private sector and he works in an hospital or he's a teacher or he's a local government carer. So I think it is there and we have to obviously battle against it, but actually people's experience tells them that these bastards are after all of us, whether you work in the public sector or whether you work in the private sector. I wanted to say briefly about solidarity. And I think, congratulations to the teachers who are coming out, and to the CW and any other group of workers who are organising and who are fighting. And we have to, and if we are not there yet, we want the ballot. We are fighting tooth and nail and think we aren't going to get one for industrial action over the privatisation of probation. But on the 1st of October, like we did, and one of our stewards sat there, in June when News Lot were on strike, is we got the banner outside our office and we got loads of us, I mean probably half of our members, and we marched up to the town centre to show solidarity with the teachers, and that's what we've got to, we will do that again, there's absolutely no doubt. And if people are in struggle, take a petition round and collect for them, and again that's what we will do, we will try and get to your picket lines. And, you know, this stuff about coordinated strike action, it's so frustrating, isn't it? Because it cannot be that hard for them to organise it. I mean, it's just ABC, isn't it? But if they're not, all the things that we do in terms of solidarity, whether we're on strike or whether we're not, anything that's progressive, we have to get behind it. And that's the way that we can give our members confidence and try and spread the idea that actually we need to go on strike and we need to all come out together.
I'll come round here so you have a better chance of hearing me. Liz Lawrence, UCU. I wanted to raise first of all the question of the anti-union laws, because I think this is one of the big issues we've got to keep in sight when we're campaigning and trying to go union solidarity. I'm old enough to remember before it was secondary action, when we just called it worker solidarity. And you know, part of the issue a lot of the unions are facing is having to frame all our discontents into a dispute around pay or pensions or work codes or whatever. Because it's unlawful to come out on strike just because you don't like the government. I mean, indeed, one of the things that was refreshing about the teachers' pension dispute and other public service pension disputes was in one of the few times when we could have it in strike against the government within the laws. Because normally, if it's defined as a political strike and you can't do it. So now obviously hopefully the day will come where we're all strong enough to just defy and get rid of these anti-union laws. Meanwhile, it's a question of how we work around them to try and get disputes happening. But it is something that makes it more difficult because there's what you put in your official union literature, which is that this dispute's about pay or pensions or whatever. There's what your activists are talking about on the ground, where they're talking about all the discontents workers have and their concerns about the future of the health service and all the other issues and resistance to austerity and opposition to the bedroom tax and so on. And it's this sort of fine line between mobilising on all the issues people are actually discontent about, but also running a trade dispute on a more targeted issue. I think this is one of the challenges facing the movement at the moment. I think the other thing is how we all come out and strike together, how we get a general strike, or sometimes it's easy just like coordinated action, because the danger is if everybody waits for everyone else, nobody goes. And that's, I think, one of the problems at the moment, that we've got to make sure that, yes, we want joint union action, but it mustn't be used by the bureaucracy as a sort of precondition to say, unless X comes out, Y doesn't come out too, because then we don't get anywhere. And I think that's the other problem that we need to be talking about. Just lastly, one suggestion on solidarity. If you, for instance, aren't out on strike as the same day as another group of workers who haven't even got time to go and visit their picket line because it's at a distance or something, maybe short little lunchtime protests for 10 minutes where you all stand outside with placards saying we support the health workers, the steel workers or whoever, and get it photographed and put around the web. You know, that can be a way of at least giving a little practical demonstration of solidarity.